faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. You're listening to Freedom Rings. I'm your host, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Welcome to another Freedom Rings, and I am so excited that we have Jeremy Hunt joining us for this episode. He is a lifelong Georgian, a West Point grad, a former U.S. Army captain, and he is now running to represent Georgia's 2nd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. And the more I get to know Jeremy and learn about his life and his background, the more impressed that I am with him. And I'm just so excited to be able to support his campaign. And Jeremy is an outspoken champion for our American conservative values, and he truly is among the GOP's next generation of leaders. He is all ready, he is set, he is going to help flip Georgia's 2nd Congressional District. He's going to turn it red, and he is part of the team that is going to fire Nancy Pelosi. And he's helping lead that red wave through Georgia in November. And he has a runoff election on Tuesday, June 21st. So, Jeremy, why don't you tell our listeners why you're the best candidate to serve Georgia's 2nd Congressional District and get our country back on track?
Well, thank you so much, Senator, for that amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. And yes, you are exactly right. I am so fired up to finally defeat this 30-year Democrat incumbent, Sanford Bishop, and get our country back on track. This is the year to finally retire Nancy Pelosi and have people in Congress who actually stand not only for our conservative values, but also our Christian values, people who are principled, who have a backbone. And to answer your question, why am I the best candidate to serve? To put it plainly, I know what it means to fight. When I was in the Army, I proudly graduated from West Point and commissioned as an active duty Army officer. I was a military intelligence officer and served as a captain. And the Army brought me down to Fort Benning, where I earned my jump wings, became a paratrooper. And I was deployed to Ukraine, actually, of all places back then. And I can tell you that getting back and serving my country, I'm here to fight for our farmers in our district. I'm here to fight for our law enforcement who have just been completely lied about in our media. I am here to fight for our families so we can finally be able to live in this horrible, disastrous Joe Biden economy. So I'm here to fight to get America energy independent. But there's so many different grounds to fight on. I'm ready, and we are fired up here to make a difference.
And I think Georgia is ready to send you to Congress because you know what it means to just really dedicate yourself to service. And one of the things that impressed me was how you grew up with parents who were both evangelical ministers. And your home environment was all about selfless service.
That's right.
And then I want you to talk a little bit about that and how you carried that with you to West Point and then into your service as a captain. So walk us through that experience.
Yeah, well, I'm thankful. I'm a lifelong Georgian and grew up here. I'm actually a 6th generation Georgian. And, my parents, I'm so thankful to have grown up in a house with a mother and a father who loved each other and loved us, and a father who's a pastor and taught and as in a theologically conservative church and taught me the truth, the gospel, and preached a Bible believing church. These are just basic things that a lot of young kids might take for granted. It really is a miracle to be able to be brought up in a home like that, where I learned the truth at an early age. And so I'm so thankful for that and developed a personal relationship with the Lord. And I'm thankful for that upbringing because I was taught the gospel, but I was also taught our conservative values as well. And my father, he taught me from day one that we are first and foremost are conservatives, and we do not believe that the government can ever can ever meet the needs of adequately meet the needs of our community. It's going to be a limited government principle where families are the cornerstone and churches and community groups come together. That is where the American dream is realized. And so fast forward many years later, and now as I'm running my campaign, it is all about faith, family, and community. And I will not stop fighting until families are protected, churches are flourishing, and communities are coming together. We know that is where the answer, that's what the answer is. It's not going to be more Washington elite ideas trying to break down the family and isolate our young people so that they are just so focused on social media and big government. No, we need people connected with families, and that's what we're here to fight for.
And then you took that fighting spirit into your work, helping protect our country. And touch on your work with the Ukrainian military and what you did there, helping to train them.
Yes, well, I'll start by saying first, I'm so thankful for my experience as an Army intelligence officer, and I'm thankful that the Army stationed me in South Georgia, where I got to serve with just some of the greatest, just amazing heroes that even some that you might not hear about in the news or what they're doing, but folks that have sacrificed so much. And so I had just the honor of serving in a leadership position as an officer, and one thing I learned is when you show up at your platoon, especially as a young lieutenant, you have to be willing to listen. I mean, you'll have platoon sergeant and other soldiers beneath you that have actually served even longer than you have and know what it's like to be an intel officer. And so I always listened, and my role was to advocate for resources for our unit and to make sure I was the moral compass of our team. And that honestly is kind of what I brought into politics is when I'm going around and meeting with farmers and small business owners and different leaders in our community, I'm first listening. And my job is to get resources to our district and get our community back on path. And going into Ukraine, that was just an amazing experience. I was there for a little over 6 months, and we were training the Ukrainian armed forces on NATO doctrine, on the way that the West does warfare. And I can tell you the Ukrainian people are just so amazing. I mean, they love their country. They are literally fighting for their homeland, and they are not going to give up without a fight. And of course, even though different governments, the Ukrainian government has certainly had some corruption issues there, I can say that the people love their country, and they are just amazing the way that they are defending their homeland, patrolling their neighborhoods with their own weapons. I mean, it truly is fascinating. And so that honestly is what I think I hope will reawaken a thirst for freedom here at home. That people here in America will start waking up and saying freedom is only one generation away from extinction. It's time that we wake up and fight for our liberty too. And so that's something that's really been on my heart recently.
And I can tell that service with the Ukrainian army impacted you. And I have no doubt that is going to influence your service. One of the things, Jeremy, as I've watched your bio video and have read about you, it is when you look at your background, you and your wife, Kai, service seems to be your byword. And yeah. I would imagine that you all are imparting that to your daughter. I think it's Kinsley. Is that right?
Right. That's our 2-year-old. That's right.
And 2-year-olds can be pretty rambunctious.
That's exactly right. and Kinsley is no exception to that rule.
And, I'm sure a lot of this work that you're doing now and looking to run for Congress is there to protect that gift of freedom that Americans enjoy and that opportunity to dream those big dreams and make them come true. Yeah. And that is something that you were wanting for her. Well, you touched on the fact that Sanford Bishop has been in that district for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And the district has changed and people are looking for new representation in that district. So what are the issues that people are really talking about in Georgia's 2nd district?
Yeah, well, let me just say that what makes it so exciting is that, I mean, of course, the congressional lines are redrawn, and so that's obviously made the seat, the most competitive that it's ever been. But even beyond that, it's just you talk to voters, even some voters who voted with Sanford in the past or might have voted Democrat in the past, they are so fed up. And people often ask me, what do you think it is that's leading so many voters in our district to start moving to the Republican Party? And what I tell them is that honestly, it's not so much that they have just suddenly decided to move to the Republican Party. It's that the Democrat Party has gotten so radical, left progressive socialist movement has taken over the Democrat Party that the Democrat Party has left a lot of these voters behind. And we are here saying, listen, even though, there, especially in our district where half of the voters here are mostly African-American Democrat voters, we're talking to many of them and saying, look, regardless of how you might have voted in the past or how you might have been raised, there's only one party in this country that represents freedom, that fights for individual thought and being self-reliant and liberty and also preserving our values for the next generation. And so that positive vision for our country and that idea is what has just caught fire all of our district, because that's what people really care about. And the Democrat Party has gotten so progressive, elite, and just they've lost connection with their base. And so the main issues, of course, number one is the economy. I mean, it is the gas prices at the pump, and we've talked about it quite a bit. You see it on the news, and the thing is that the issue is only getting worse. It's one of those things. It's not like some news story that just kind of goes away after a couple of cycles. It's just the issue actually is getting worse and worse, and we're feeling that, especially here in our district, where many of our farmers, their diesel prices have skyrocketed, and that's also led to the price of fertilizer is now 4 times as much. So in our district in particular, the economy is the number one thing. And then second to that, I would say a lot of folks here, they want to be energy independent. We want to drill for oil here. We do not want to be reliant on foreign oil. And it's a national security issue when you're dependent on oil from Russia and Iran and Venezuela and those other countries. But it's also an issue that also leads to higher gas prices. So that, and then finally the border just being out of control, illegal immigration, millions of undocumented folks coming over that we have no idea where they're going, where they are in our community. That is a major problem. And then also the drug trafficking and human sex trafficking. All of that, I would say, are the kind of top issues that we hear about when we travel around the district.
Oh, I think that you are so right on that. People are so worried with the inflation, and then they look at the crime that is coming into their communities. And much of that, as you mentioned, is driven by the open border policies of the Biden administration. And the fact that the drug traffickers, the human traffickers, sex traffickers, the gangs are just flooding across that southern border. And I say every town's a border town, every state's a border state because of what has happened and is happening every day at that southern border. Well, Jeremy, I can't let you go since this podcast is called Freedom Rings. Can't let you go without asking you, what does freedom mean to you and why is it worth the fight?
Yeah. Freedom means to me being able to raise my family free of government interference and also free of the progressive indoctrination that is just completely corrupting the minds of our children. I want to be able to raise my family in an America where I can teach Kinsley, our daughter, we can teach her our values and not have to worry about her going to school and teachers teaching her something totally contrary to what we're teaching her at home. We want to grow up in an America where we are free and independent thinkers, and we have a free market of ideas. That is the America that we are fighting for, and that's what freedom looks like to me. And so I'm fighting to preserve that freedom for my family and for families like mine across Southwest and Middle Georgia.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of Freedom Rings. I really am so pleased that our listeners have the opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you and to see what a freedom fighter that you are and what a strong conservative leader that you are. And we know that Georgians certainly need a strong conservative leader like you to help get Georgia and this country back on track. And I am so pleased to endorse you. And I'm urging all of our listeners in Southwest and Middle Georgia to get involved in your campaign and get out and vote on Tuesday, June 21st. And with you every step of the way on this, and looking forward to having you join me in Washington. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about Jeremy, you can follow him on Twitter at The Jeremy Hunt, on Facebook at Jeremy C. Hunt, and on his website at jeremyforgeorgia.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Senator. I really appreciate you having me on. It's such an honor.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Freedom Rings. You can follow me on Twitter at Vote Marsha, Facebook at Marsha Blackburn for Senate, and on Instagram at Team Marsha. And you can always find us online at marshablackburn.com. The Freedom Rings podcast is edited and produced by Jared Cummings. Executive producers are Conservative Partnership Center and Marsha Blackburn. Together, we make Freedom Ring.